Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on events, basic setup and configuration presented by Member 365. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Christine Bundy. I'm the Director of Customer Success. And fun fact, I love questions. So if you have questions at any time throughout this presentation, please put them into the Q&A. It's found at the bottom of your screen. All questions are good questions. There's no silly questions. Anything related can come, even if you have a couple questions that aren't, happy to answer them as we go along. Because everyone has been muted, cameras have all been turned off. We are recording today, and all recordings will be going on our YouTube channel afterwards. What are we going to be going over today? I got a really long list. These are all the items that we're going to go over. The gist of it is, though, is we're going to go through a basic setup. We're actually going to set it up as a webinar. Today, you're going to learn how to do a simple setup like you would for a webinar. And then we're going to go through some best practices and have time for those questions. So again, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please put them into the Q&A. And if I see them as we'll go, I'll answer them, or we will have time at the end. Let's jump into Member 365. I'm already logged in here. And one thing I always like to point out is if you are logged in and you don't see events at the top here or any of these other items, it's because you do not have admin permission to do so. So one thing that you are going to want to do is go to your admin manager and make sure that you get the permissions that you need. Today, if you are creating an event, you can simply come in and create. You can also go to manage your events and duplicate. So come in here and copy an existing one by simply giving it a new name. So one thing I always like to do is, and I encourage, is in some associations have like templates that they use year after year, and then they just modify them. Or you can come in and go to your last one that you did. So if you're doing another annual general meeting, you simply just clone it and then update it for the next year. That's also very common. But at least having that template is really important. So it's what's set up correctly and you're just minor adjustments such as pricing or you're adding more tickets options, things along those lines. So I've already have one set up here. So I'm just going to go into it to show you what I've done and what you can do. So first thing you're going to do is give it a name. Now, if you are not doing a webinar, you're doing an in-person, maybe a lunch and learn, and you want to have badges, you can simply copy the name of the event down below, and you can produce badges in the reporting section. And that will be spoken in the session in 2 weeks when we talk about conferences. But today we're mainly focused on small events, but that is an option. Then you want to do your event categories. Now, not everyone uses these. If you have multiple events, year after year, or month after month or week after week, you're definitely going to want a color code. I love color code. It's very simple. Or if you have different types of webinars or different types of events, you can categorize them together. So when you go to your calendar, it's very pretty. And it also makes it easy for people to filter. If they're like, oh, I just want to know about where all the socials are, they can just filter and get all of those dates that they want. Then you're going to add a description. And in your description, you can add text. You can also add links and images in here. And you can also do embed codes. I've seen some people put in videos for conferences or other things along those lines as like a preamp. So those are things that you can add in here. You can simply go to source code and embed things. You can come over here to add images. Make sure that if you're adding images, you select show media. Show files is for like PDFs, Excel, PowerPoint, things along those lines. Show media is for your PNGs and your JPEGs. Always recommend using PNGs. They are the best with our system. Then as we go down, you can add a logo and a banner. Now, I always recommend the banner because it's what appears on the landing page for the event. So if you're sharing that registration link publicly, and also it appears in the member portal and whatever the most recent event is. And some people use this as a strategy. So some people will just have their banner as a logo because this will replace the image on the landing page if you don't have a banner. And then they only put banners for the events that they really want to promote as like a feature event. So there's kind of a workaround for that if you're thinking of wanting one. So you definitely want to do your banners. And if you're, hey, what are the specs? So they're right here. So you go these little question marks and you can get the specs. So the width is up to 800, and then it can be as long as you want it to be. Just be careful not to make it too long or it will overtake the page. Then you can choose your background. And again, you can do a custom background if you go up to the top here, and then you can find the dimensions for that. Make sure you are saving as you go. If you've already published it, then make sure you're publishing if you're making any updates. Now, some people might get nervous about saving publicly, but I'll show you in a couple of minutes how you don't have to be afraid of that. So bear with me. So next you're going to do your dates. Now you can do a start and end date. So this is, for example, if you have a conference, it starts on a Monday and it ends on a Wednesday. But you also might, for webinars or small events, you might want to do a specific date that gives you a specific time. So you want to pick the time and the date, and you can put it in here. If you have more than one, you can do multiple. So some people also for the conferences say the first day is only from 12 to 8 or 12 to 5, and then the next day is from this time, and then the next day is from this time. You can do either. Either work. It doesn't matter which one you want to do, but that's the difference between the two of them. For location, again, if you have a physical location, you want to put it in. I like to put for webinars, just like on online webinar, and then what platform are you using? So they get kind of a heads up. If you have a GoToMeeting or if you're using Google, whatever platform you're using, I like to just put in here so people are prepared as to what platform they need to make sure they have installed or have access to on their computers, or which computer to use. Then we're going to go over to registration. Now, there are 3 options. There's no registration. So if you're simply just doing that, save the date, anybody can come, I don't need registration, that's when you would say no. Yes is if you want people to register because you want to know who is going to be attending. This is also important if you're going to be using our new Zapier connection, which we'll be going through next week. So if you're connecting things with Zoom automatically, you need to have the registration and you need to have the knowledge as to who that person is. Something to think about. So again, next week we will be going over Zapier integrations and what that looks like and how to do it. And if it's something you're interested in, we can explore that. And then there's third party. So if you are doing a webinar with a partner and you're using their registration process, you can put in the URL. Now, if you are doing this, you need to make sure that these 2 options are off because you're not doing registration through Member 365. If you are doing it through Member 65, you want to have these on if you're allowing non-members to register. And to reduce friction, you want to turn off making it mandatory for them to log in. So the allow no login means they simply just click the link with their email, they get the member pricing. So long as that email is the one that's on their profile. So something maybe to also add in your description is please make sure you use your member login email for registering to get your member pricing. So those are things to take into consideration. I know some associations will, I only want members to be able to register. If they don't have a membership on for that email or on that contact record, they can't register. You can restrict non-members not being able to register whatsoever. So the beautiful thing is that they don't have to log in. It just won't provide any tickets if they don't have the option to be able to purchase them. And again, if it's for members only, make sure you add that in your description somewhere clear. So if non-members are like, hey, I wanted to register, you're not a member, would you like to become one? Kind of getting those avenues through. Then you're going to set your open date and your close date. Now, if you're doing conferences, you have the ability to do 2 early bird dates and a late registration date. If you do not want people to withdraw from an event, you would put the withdrawal date the same date as the open date, because that means that they couldn't do it. You could do it on the back end, but they could not physically withdraw from the event. If you want them to be able to, but only up to a certain date, you simply just need to put it in. And you can add penalties if you want to. So up to this date, they then have a penalty if they withdraw. Same applies for modifications. So if you don't want them doing modifications or you don't want them making updates, you just make the date the same as the open date. Next, you have your confirmation template. So this is the email that would go out to them. You need to make sure that there is content in here. Now, if you are not going to be doing the Zapier integration or simply just sending them the information, you're going to want to put the link or information for the meeting in here. So what is the link and how can they log into the webinar? You need to make sure there's a subject line so that it will send. If there's no subject line, it will not send. But again, you can tailor this any way you like, and then just make sure you save as you go. You can also do certificates. So that's one thing I love about the system is that it will automatically generate for anyone that is marked as attending. So once you get your roster, even from like today, I can go in and I can see everyone that's attended today. I can then import it into the system, mark them as attending, and they could get a certificate if we so choose to. And it can appear in the member portal, so they always have access to it, and it can also be emailed to them. So they can also get an email that is, you can customize if you like. This is our standard template. This link does need to be in there. So when they click on the link, they can see the certificate. Next, we're going to talk about audience. So we do have the ability though for attendance to be on by default. I don't like using this feature. I know a couple of associations, they love it and that's great. But I personally, if somebody's only shown up for a webinar for 5 minutes, I'm not going to give them a certificate because they didn't earn the certificate. So for those reasons, if you have CE credits that you have to ensure that they do it for a certain amount of time, you want to make sure that you don't have this turned on and that you're toggling them as attending after the event is closed. Next is audience. If I'm coming in here for the first time, I'm creating an event and I don't want it to be public, I would come in here and I would simply go to workspace and I would find a workspace that is for my team. Now, a lot of people just have a staff workspace for testing purposes, or they might have a workspace labeled specifically for training. These are things that you can click on, and then only the people that have access to that workspace can see this event and then test it. So I always like to have like an events testing one or a staff one, whatever one works for you, but having a workspace that you can then hide it. So it's not visible on the public calendar. It's just visible for you as you're testing it out. And it's really important you test it out. For today, because I already have this public site, and I always love having members get their portal access. And this is a strategy in conversion. If you give a non-member the non-member portal view, you can market to them. In the welcome message, you could have information about how to become a member, what are the benefits, check out our member space. You want to learn more, join now. So those are great avenues for conversion. And they might see more benefit as to your organization if they get access to the portal. They can also go in and modify things themselves. If you allow withdrawals or modifications, if they need receipts, they can log in and get that information themselves as well without having to grab the admin to do it for them. You also can add in alerts. So if you want to know when someone registers and when someone withdraws, you can add names, you can add multiples. So if there's more than one email you want to put in here, you could just put a comma between them. And then finally, at the bottom here, this is the registration link. So this is where we would go to see what it looks like. And I'm just going to pop it up to show you. So this is what it would look like when you are advertising this through your social media. If you're putting the link in an email campaign to go out, they would come here, be able to read more, and then also be able to just click and register. All right, so let's go over tickets because these are a really important one. So if we go in here, so for webinars or just small events, I normally just have one ticket. You can have multiples if you need to. I normally have one ticket, and the way that is very simple. Now we're not doing any of the add-ons, so we don't need to enable them. These will go over in the conference webinar, which is in 2 weeks. But you can do credits. So if they've earned credits, you can say how many credits they're earning, for which level it's for, And then those can automatically be added on if they're marked as attending. So only when they're marked as attending do they get their credits and their certificates after the event is closed. Then you want to either limit it to purchaser. If you don't, and you want to allow an admin to register multiple people, then you want to force ticket assignment. Now, but you want to use either one of these. And again, if you're going to do integrations with Zapiers, you need to know who those people are. So you need to have one of these on. Typically for webinars, the trend is that you register yourself. Somebody can go back in and register somebody else, but it's one at a time. But it's an option that's available for you. I then allow non-members and then set pricing. So you can do a flat fee. If it's free for everybody, that's great. But if it's free for members and not free for non-members, then you want to do by category. And then you can come in here and do specific pricing for different categories. So you could have your staff be free for testing purposes. And then the different membership categories can have different pricing or simply all be free and only the non-members. Now, one thing why some people do 2 tickets is they have a member ticket where it's free and non-members can't purchase it. And then they have a non-member ticket where there's a price so that if a member wants to purchase, they then go and purchase the non-member ticket for anyone other than themselves. And then it's forced ticket assignment for that one. Because if a member purchases a ticket using their email and you have forced ticket assignment and they purchase more than one, it's at a member price, not a non-member price. Whoever's the purchaser is the charge that is affected. So if I'm a member and I buy 2 tickets, even though one is for a non-member, I still pay the member price, not the non-member price. If I'm a non-member and I come in, I pay the non-member price no matter what. I can't even purchase the member ticket. So those are cases where you might want to have 2. And if not, then you can just have the 1. Make sure you add. If you need to add instructions, you can add them in here. They appear at the top when someone is selecting tickets or adjusting their tickets. So that is something that you can add in as well. Then you want to set your taxes, your payments. Anything that is highlighted in blue is enabled. If you have different ledgers or chart of accounts for each type of event that you host, you can select it. I know some accountants love this because then in their ledgers, they get a subtotal for each and it's really easy and clear. And then others like, nope, it's all events just getting lumped into one and that's totally fine. So however you or your accounting team wants to manage that, but you can have it in separate ledgers. So it's a little bit easier on your revenue report. Again, as you're making updates, make sure you save as you go. Now, one last thing that we want to kind of go over for webinars or before we're testing is renewal reminders. Again, the other items we'll talk about when we talk about conferences in 2 weeks, but reminders are important because you want to at least have one going out the morning or the day of the event. And how you would set that up is you would literally have this go to 0. So that morning they would get a reminder with all the information of how to log in. So it's directly in their inbox. Now, if you're integrating with Zapier for Zoom or your GoToMeeting, it will automatically do this for you through the Zoom registration that is connected. But if you're not and you're doing it separately, then you are going to have to do it this way. So just something to always be aware of. You can do multiples. So if you want to do more than one, you can have one being 2 days before, a week before, anything along those lines. For conferences, you can set up multiples to preempt for when they're going or what's going on up until the conference, or if there's things you need them to remind them to do before the conference. Once you're done, you're simply going to hit publish, and then you're going to test your event. Now, if your event is not open, so let's say, for example, we go back over here and we move this to being on the 1st. So nobody can register until the 1st. Right now, it's not, that registration link is going to disappear over here. So if I refresh this, the registration link button is going to disappear. So how do I test it? As an administrator, you can go to the member portal, and as an admin, you can register for your event for testing purposes. So I can come in here and it says this message down here. So it doesn't begin, registration does not begin until the first, but as an admin, you can register earlier. So I can go in here and I can test it. Now, I've had to make sure that when I was doing all of my when I was doing my tickets, that admin staff were selected. If it's not selected, you'll come in here and you won't see any tickets. So if you're testing and you say, hey, why do I have no tickets? It's because your permissions haven't been granted for your admin profile. Again, have a staff membership, admin staff, however you want to word it, but have one that you always select for $0 for testing purposes so that you can come in. Or have a like fake membership added to your profile for the other pricings, but always test for a member versus a non-member pricing. So even if you just change the open date for one day, or if you go in and impersonate a non-member so that you make sure that you have the pricing correctly for both and you're not surprised by anything. So I'm simply going to come in here and I can register. For me, it's going to be $0. I can check my tickets and then continue. If you have forced ticket assignment, there will be a button there to say assign ticket, but we again had limited to purchasers, so I can only purchase the ticket for myself. And there you go. So I now tested the registration. I can return from the CRM and I can go down to my reports and see the registration in the reports. So there's been 8 people who registered for this event, and I can go in and see who they are. And then when the event closes, you can go up to your attendance and start marking people as attended, or you can do an import for your attendance and only those individuals. For more of this, we will again go over this during the conference for the reporting functions. All right, so let's go back to member 365 and let's to the slides, and we are going to go over some best practices. First one is categorizing and segmenting your events, make your calendar look a little bit prettier and easier to segment in the calendar. You also want to add a banner, make it beautiful in the member portal. So again, if we go back to the member portal over here, one of the banners that was featured. Sorry, as it takes a minute. So this is one of the banners. It's the event that is upcoming. So the one that is upcoming will appear here. They can click on it and register for the event. Then we want to enable no login. Again, reduce friction. People forget passwords all the times, and you want to make sure that you don't have that friction point. You want to make it as seamless as possible and then go from there. And then make sure that you are testing and that if you don't want it public facing, do a specific workspace that only your staff has access to, or a group of individuals that you're using for testing. And then they can go in and do all the price testing for the different variations that you have and make sure that everything's going to go smoothly. Enable limit to purchaser or forced ticket assignment, really important so you know exactly who is coming and you're not guessing, especially if you're doing CE credits or certificates, you want to have a name attached to that individual. Otherwise, if people registered, it just literally says a blank for first and last name in the registration and you have no idea who they are. It's just an email address. Create a ledger for the event. Again, this isn't for everybody, but I know quite a few that like this for tracking for accounting purposes. If you want to create it and then add it in. Making organization drop downs. So if you have non-members enabled in the advanced settings, as new people come into the system, one thing that you do want to ensure that you are doing is continuing with that drop down. We get a lot of complaints of duplicates for organization names. So if you are making an organization mandatory for when they put in their contact information for the first time, you want to make sure that their organization aligns with the ones that you have in your system. Otherwise, again, you can spell member 365 9 different ways if you ask 9 different people how to spell it, because everyone either uses uppercase, lowercase letters, they put spaces, some do acronyms, some don't. So this just helps with that. And finally, Create a template. So either use the previous one and you can duplicate, or have a template that you can duplicate off of for every time you're doing it. And you can just kind of start from there and then tailor it every year as you need to. All right, let's get into questions. I see lots of questions. I love questions. Okay, so do close dates allow them to register that day? No. So if you're closing it, you're closing it at midnight, so they can't register that day. So if you're hosting a webinar at 2 o'clock and you say only until 1 o'clock, at 1 o'clock, go and close it and put the date up, and then people can't register for it. I hope that helps. Yeah, it's the day of that they can't register. Is email address that recipients receive once registered? What is the email? Oh, the email address. Sorry. What is it's your default email address from the system. When you're in your profile information. Sorry, where's my mouse? There we go. If you go up to configuration, yes, I'm gonna leave, and you go to organization profile, and you go to your default. So your default emails here, this is the emails that are used for the system for events and things along those lines. So that's the system default email that will be sent. If I have renewal reminders for before the event, that is different from the reminders I send out after. Can I have 2 different reminders, or do all reminders need to be the same language? I'm a little confused on this one. If you can add some context, that'd be great. Otherwise, I can follow up with you afterwards. The renewal reminders for the reminders before the event and after the event, you could have whatever language you want in those reminders. It's completely up to you. They don't have to be the same. Some people do an after event reminder to say, hey, thanks, and then have a link to a survey so they can get some feedback. So your reminders can be completely customizable for each reminder that you set. They do not have to be the same. So I hope that helps. How can I sign up for a conference planning webinar in a few weeks? It is on our website. So if you go to blogs, oh, I will make sure that we add it in here. I will add webinars to that. Oh, and update this page. So upcoming webinars on our website here, you can see all the webinars that we will be hosting. And so there is the advanced configuration and reporting, which will be more for people that are doing conferences. So you can click on there and register there. And we also have the integration with Zapier next week as we completed that. So I hope that helps. Can registrants receive a calendar hold for their corporation email after registration? Oh, the block in the calendar, not at the moment. This is something that we are working on to be able to add so people can click the link to block it. It doesn't automatically get added to their calendar, but there will be the option. You can, in the meantime, create your own calendar and embed it in. So if you're using Google or Outlook, if you literally just Google how to make a calendar link, and then you can put that in temporarily. But we are working on that solution. We don't have one at the moment. Can you talk about forms or is that in the other meeting? So forms will be in the other meeting if you're wanting to attach additional questions. Again, this is just for a basic event, but simplified, if you want to, you can. There's 2 places to add forms, and it has to be an event form. If you want it to be for every individual that purchased, if you wanted just one set of answers, it doesn't matter if they sign up 10 people or 1 person, it's just one set of questions for the entire group, and they only answer once, then you would do it at the end here, and then you would select that form. So those are the 2 places you can put them. You do not want the same form in both locations. You either want to pick one or the other. 90% of the time, it's added to the ticket. So each individual that gets a ticket gets a form to fill out for it, especially if you're doing foods, like do you want to know allergies and things along those lines, you want to have it attached per ticket. So I hope that helps. And we will, in the forms webinar that we will be hosting this year, and again, we are revamping, so we're going to be, stay tuned for all the new ones that are coming up every month, and you can learn more about that. Is there a way to add tickets without using an import registration? For example, to create our monthly board meeting and add board members without them registering. There's no way to automatically register individuals. You would have to do an import for them. That's the only way to do it. They can't, yeah, there's no way other ways to do it. They would need to manually, either you would have to impersonate them to do it, they would have to do it, or you just or if you don't necessarily for board members, do you need them to register? Is it just a save the date type of thing for them so that they can always go and look at it? And do you restrict it? Do they have like a committee or workspace that you limit it to so only they see that? Or is it something that you want public? Few questions for you. If you want to talk about that more, I'm more than happy to. Please submit a ticket and I will be happy to have further conversation about it. All right, so I think that's all of our questions. Thank you so much for the great questions. Again, I love questions, so keep them coming. If you have more, feel free to submit them as a ticket and to reach out to us. We're always happy to help and to learn from you. So every question allows us to kind of adapt as we need to make the software work better for you guys. So thank you again. I really appreciate everyone who came out to join us today. I look forward to you joining us on our next webinar next week, which will be about Zapier integration. Bye for now.